So what if Jesus was serious? It's nice to recognize after last week that we serve a risen Savior, right? And so we're going to look again at some of his words today and figure out whether or not he was serious and what our expectations are. So quick recap. I don't know if you want to talk about the golden rule.
No, this is not a recap.
This is new?
This is all new.
Oh, okay, this is new. Sorry, this is the new stuff. No recap. We're jumping right into it. Okay.
I thought this was a recap. Didn't we? I think we had.
Yeah. Okay.
Does this look familiar?
Okay, this is brand new.
See, here's our problem.
We prepare so much in advance.
This was probably written 4 weeks ago.
That's right.
And it's in our material, and we eventually get to it. It's just that we've already seen it for 4 weeks. And so sometimes we
It feels familiar.
Yeah, it feels familiar.
Okay, so brand new material today, Aaron. Starting in chapter 53, based on Matthew 7, 9 through 12. If Jesus was serious, then merely tolerating those who are different isn't enough.
Tolerating. That's the word for today.
We talked a lot about tolerance, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I guess, how have you been taught about the golden rule during your Christian life?
Just do what it says, right? That's the golden rule.
Pretty simple.
Very simple. Right?
No qualifiers.
Only if they agree with you, only if you like them. None of those.
That's in your back of your mind.
Oh, yeah,
You
that's
know in the
here.
front of your mind that you should, treat everybody.
I
like
think
you'd like.
it's like, it's sort of your reaction. Like if someone comes up and they're super nice, I'm like, oh, I'm super nice, right?
Right.
If someone comes up and they're a little bit on edge, I'm like, I start taking on whatever that is. So I don't know if that's,
Yeah, so we reflect kind of
Yes,
what's
that's
being, aimed at us.
Yeah.
Right, if somebody's super nice to us, super outgoing, super friendly, very engaging, man, I feel like I like this person. But if they're mean and mad and taking it out on me, then what's your problem, Rick? Why are you acting this? I'm gonna get back at you.
Yeah, kind of like what Rod and Lisa say. I think, when something happens, well, you need to treat others the way you want to be treated. But it's just kind of nonchalant, just do better, try harder. It's not really being serious about did Jesus really mean this? It's just kind of, Terry, you need to do better. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And it's just kind of, okay, then move on.
Right, if it's convenient, if I feel like it, if I've had enough caffeine, maybe I can stretch a little bit. Yeah.
I heard somebody say once to compare people that were from California to people in the Northeast. People in the Northeast aren't nice, but they're kind. And people in California are kind, but they're not nice.
Okay.
And so like people in the Northeast they're gonna be rude to your face. But if your car's broken down, they'll pull off on the side of the road and help you.
Right,
Whereas in California, people will be really, pleasant to your face, but they're not gonna help you do anything. Because they're too much in a hurry to get to the next place.
Right. Yeah.
And the guy elaborated, and I was like, oh, he didn't talk about Midwestern people, so sorry.
Well, we're right in the middle. We're right in the middle. We do both. We're kind and nice.
Yeah.
Or neither.
Or neither, yeah.
Both, but they'll never be your friend.
That's the third.
Like, you don't trust people. So,
That's why the therapist profile said, I'm a Central Illinois long-term resident, which means I am one of you.
I'm one of you.
So I had a group yesterday, boys lacrosse team up in one of the suburbs of Chicago, and we were trying to make a left turn, and there was just traffic both ways. And one of the coaches said to me, he goes, okay, there's nobody going to let you in because we're in Chicago. It just, we got those things, just like what Alan was talking about. That's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is, right? Right.
Yeah, so we find this, this isn't as easy as it sounds then. It's straightforward, but it's really not that easy.
Simple, but not complicated.
Simple, but not.
Difficult. Right?
Yeah, so what do we do with it, right? So how do you want to be treated? And going back to the tolerance here, are we treating everyone in the same manner? Or do we have levels of the way we treat people? And I know we talked about this a couple lessons back, I don't know, maybe a couple months back. Yeah, especially if this is, material we've already covered before.
Right.
But yeah, how do we have these people that we like, that we're gonna treat that way, and then we have the next level of people that, will be maybe kind but not nice, or just the opposite. But then there's a level of people that we'll just ignore.
And I like the graph, right? Love and difficulty. All right, the more difficult it is, right? The easier it is, I can demonstrate a little more love, but the more difficult it is. So should we talk about the graph a little bit? The silver
Yeah.
rule? So a lot of religions are based on what's called the silver rule, which is do no harm, right? Just do no harm, right? Requires a little bit of effort, but just do no harm. We're touching on, of course, the golden rule, love your neighbor as yourself, and how we want to be treated. But this really evolves into the platinum rule, as the author puts it, which says, love one another as I have loved you, which is based on John 15. Look at that.
Yeah. That gets even more complicated. You got that one?
Yeah. So John 15, 12 and 13 reads, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Pretty high on the love scale, pretty high on the difficulty scale. Love each other as I have loved you. It makes it pretty clear, right? There's no gray area about that. Sacrificial love. High degree of difficulty. Which leads us back to tolerance, right?
That's right.
Tolerance isn't enough. Love, self-sacrificing love is the expectation. If Jesus was serious.
Yes.
Proximity amps up the difficulty scale. Because I can be kind and practical to someone I see infrequently, once a quarter. But the next door neighbor with the thorn in the flesh is really hard to keep, extending that same.
Right, exactly.
It's interesting. It really exposes the black heart.
Right. Because you would think proximity would make it easier, right? Well, I know this person, I know what they like, it's easier for me to serve them. I know he likes a cold Mountain Dew on Sunday mornings, right? You can do those things because you know them well enough. But oppositely, we choose not to do that, right? If they get under our skin and it gets hard to serve them, and well, I know what he's going to say when I bring this up, so I'm not even going to bring it up. I'm going to hold on to it, and it turns into all this stuff.
Oh, Kristen said something interesting when she mentioned, it really shows our black heart, dark heart that we really have. And again, it goes back to some of the other things that Jesus has taught us that you all covered way back in the beginning of this thing. It tells us to be the light. But for some reason, we forget a lot of things that we hone in on, maybe just this. We're trying to do that on our own. But are we truly being with Jesus and being light? And where's light the brightest? It's the brightest, where's the darkest? And if we just think about it and start connecting all of these dots, then when we come to this part, we'll go, okay, you know what? I mean, who will be light regardless, because this is who I am.
Exactly. Well, kind of to the point we talked about right at the beginning, right? The more angry somebody is, the more frustrated they are, the more they're taking it out on us. We should be a brighter light. Man, what's going on? Can I help you with something? You seem really angry about that. How do we work through this together rather than me just letting my own emotion fuel the whole situation? So I was going to say, how do we want to be treated?
That's right.
And so we have some examples of that. Let's put some spin in it. How do you want to be cut off while driving? Do you want to be griped at for getting a food order wrong? Do you want to be yelled at for leaving your shoes out again? You want to be ignored because of your ideas or because of your status? You want to be shamed because of your grades, excluded for your beliefs, despised because of your choices in life, gossiped about for your messes, humiliated because of your sins, or judged at your low points? We don't like it when these things are done to us. So how do we treat others when they are in these situations?
I'm trying to make this more real for us, right? I mean,
That last one kind of sticks with me, right? Judged at your low points. Feel like I get caught in that sometimes, right? Somebody's having a bad day, something didn't go right, and they're treating me poorly because of it, and I really want to like straighten them out, rather than realizing that everything all right, Dave? Something going on today? But how can I help you? How can I serve you?
I have one kid who leaves shoes out all the time, everywhere. You trip on them every day, multiple pairs, so I get to practice that every day.
That's right. That's cool. So you're really good at it then.
Are you talking about Aaron?
Really more specific than that.
I did write that one. But yeah, I mean, this is the difficulty of this very simple teaching. Do unto others as you would have them do to us. We don't like it when this is applied to us, but yet how often are we applying this?
I also look at that and I'm like, well, you know, I think it's in the manner in which you deliver it, I guess, because some of that is teaching.
Mhm.
And, you know, God loved us enough that he taught us some of the hard stuff, right? There were rules, right? There were still things maybe we didn't get to fight, but so I think it's in the manner of, again, if someone's got some grades, you want to encourage them and help them, how can we make it better? Yes, we don't want to shame them. I mean, I think a lot of that is like, I still want to correct some of those things, but it's probably the manner in which we do it in a more loving way, I guess. 'Cause
Exactly.
it's easy, and I've done every one of those.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
you know, to go, oh, maybe if I handle it differently, you
Right.
know, in the messaging.
Right.
Because you still need to teach with God's love, like with
Right.
how we will you to.
Yeah, and that's perfect, right? That's the way that we should be able to deal with it. I think we talked about it a couple of months ago. How good are we at that? Right? You know, speaking the truth in love, I think is where we kind of based our discussions around. You know, there's truth and there's love. And we tend to squeeze the toothpaste in the tube and say, well, I'm just going to give you truth, not a lot of love to it. Or I'm just going to give you love, not a lot of truth.
You know, going on what Lisa's saying there too. Again, you know, in reality, we all are created with all of this already in us. I mean, you know, we're created in the image of God, but what we've done is we've listened to all the white noise around us and let that drown out who God really has already created us to be. So we already have this in us. It's in our DNA.
That's very true.
So how about a real world example from this week? How many people saw this on the news? Not too many. Okay, wow. Surprise. So this was a group of Christians singing on a plane, How Great Is Our God.
It's like the guy stood up and grabbed his guitar.
This guy stood up, grabbed his guitar, he's a pastor, and started leading the plane in a worship song.
I think it was on Easter Sunday.
It's,
Right?
it was sometime over the Easter
Right,
weekend.
yeah.
That's correct. Exactly. So how do we react to something like this? Keeping this in mind. So we've got a number of different quotes here. But I think this gets into, you know, especially in the US, a pluralistic society, how do we want to be treated? So first quote, the beauty of this nation is not in the exclusion of religious practices and views, but a neutral platform for the free exercise of cultural diversities, which are beautiful and valuable to a thriving culture. What do people think about that?
It might have made a difference if somebody, other religion got up and did something that they believe in strongly. That plane's full of Christians and but a Buddhist stands up and starts chanting and whatever they do.
How are we gonna take that?
Exactly. You can understand where they're coming from. If we're trying to put something on them, or
That's right.
that's just your viewpoint.
So that leads us to the second quote, which is from Muslim. I think my family and I should have a prayer session next time on a plane. How do you think that would end?
Booted off at 34.
What do you think the response would be from the others on the plane if that happened?
Or from the air marshal.
Or from the air marshal?
If somebody puts their rug, I mean, Muslims
Right
put
in
a
the
rug
eye.
down,
Mhm.
they face to the east, which might be a little confusing on aircraft, and then they start praying by bowing their head, literally prostrate,
Prostrate.
I always confuse those words,
Mhm.
prostrate to the
Prostrate.
floor. You know, I'm sure few people are gonna get a little uncomfortable,
Right.
That's right.
right?
That's right. And the third quote here is more or less in direct response to the second one. Why do you hate Christians? If the freedom of religion we enjoy here in America disturbs you, feel free to pack your bags and head to Somalia, Sudan, or wherever you came from, and take your brother with you.
That didn't even seem tolerant.
No.
I don't, I mean, I think that's, I had that thought about not just Christians, but in America, we don't like our freedoms. Take a ride, like,
Let's make you stay here.
yeah.
That's right.
But that gets into a different, because freedoms mean you have the choose to believe in a different sort of freedom than I have the choice to believe in a freedom. It gets tricky. It gets tricky. Here, the last one, had I been on the plane, I would have been offended. The incident was inappropriate proselytizing before a captive audience. Had a group of Muslims done this, they might have well been put on a no-fly list. So what's interesting here is this did not happen in America. So the first quote is not from an American. This was a European airline, and that is a Singaporean pastor. So really interesting that that's a quote from Singapore about the beauty of their nation and how they look at things. The second and third and fourth are all from America.
So this ties back to kind of the subject of the lesson. If Jesus was serious and merely tolerating those who are different isn't enough. Right? Loving people who are different is what we're called to do. Loving people who don't agree with us, loving people who might be angry, loving people who might be indifferent. We're called to do all that. We need all those things.
So
because of, the media and different things kind of tend to racial profile, and that ain't just us being that way, it's just a mental thing that just automatically goes that way. For an example, I'm a bus driver, and I have a different race of kid that was on my bus. I think they were from India or whatever. But one day she said, well, she can't ride the bus, but I have this package, can you take it? And first thing came to my mind was, bomb, her kid ain't gonna be able to. But I shouldn't have thought that way. And, I mean, that shouldn't have came to mind. I mean, I just told her, I can't take the package, but to think that way of somebody that might not even be in that, but because of their culture and the way they are, and the way media has portrayed them, it just automatically racial profile sometimes when you really shouldn't.
oh, absolutely.
It's just that individual or this person. And I think, people gonna always believe in what religion they want to. So that's like what they want to do, and that's what they want to do.
Well, I was just looking at the picture and thinking, we don't have any information of what was going on that plane other than the snapshot that we see. At least, now maybe you do if you read about it or heard about it. But maybe there was a discussion going on prior to this. Maybe there was,
So
so we jump on that bandwagon and we start ripping people based on a picture when we weren't there, we don't know what the situation was, and it just makes my.
So it does. So this church was coming back from Ukraine after a mission trip. There was some Ukrainians with them on this flight. He actually asked permission to do this from the stewards and the flight attendant, and they gave him permission. But there was still a significant amount of non-Christians on this flight. So let's make it more direct to us. Prayer in school. Are you in favor or not? Because if you say yes, then you have to let the Muslim, the Satanist, the Jewish person also have that same freedom.
I think everybody can pray at any time.
You're right.
Without there being.
That's right.
But that big controversy always gets me, because I'm
Well,
like.
the controversy is they want a very specific, led by an administrator or a teacher, Christian prayer is usually what they want. So how do we live in a pluralistic society, living by the golden rule? That's
I
tough.
think I'm all about, like, if it's done in a peaceful, orderly fashion and you're not interfering, I think there's just,
Okay.
It's
so
not
the-
a hard and fast
Yeah.
for me, like.
So what's interesting is I think both 3 and 4, 3, I think, was a Republican Christian. 4 was number 2 is the Democrat from Minnesota, and number 4 is a pastor in the US. You can just see the differences in the way so many address this issue.
And none of them, except the first one, spoke about tolerance.
Tolerance.
I mean, how long did that song take me? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, so we,
And again, yeah, that wasn't, the 2, 3, and 4 are all US. Number 1 was a non-US.
I was gonna say, I think we look at this like from adult eyes, but if you go into the kids' worlds, kids don't act like that. Like, I mean, I have some hot mess expressives in my classroom, but they are the most non-judgmental, like people. Just, we have a kid who is fasting right now. You know, does the whole Ramadan thing, and our kids don't even bat an eye. They, you know, they accept it. They are like, how does he do that? You know, we have kids that, you know, transgender, whatever, all the things, and they just don't act like adults that act. And so it's like, when do kids change?
Right.
Like, because kids are very accepting. They might be really strong Christians. I mean, we have a lot of kids that are really strong Christians, but they accept everybody. And they don't, they get a lot of grief for the bullying and this and that. Not do that. They just are like,
So somehow you
person
change.
is different, that person dresses weird, who cares?
Well, as far as when that happens to them, I think we all can agree, I think, for me, for sure, is as you're taught from a certain age, and depending on where you attend church, if you attend church at all, you're taught certain things. I was taught a bunch of garbage, and that's what I believed for a long time. And then, politics enters into it, and worldview entered into it. I didn't have the social media to contend with. I can't imagine what would happen if I had all that nonsense. But that's what you're taught, that you make your own decisions. So you're just whittled down to whatever you are. And that's what you're molded, what you believe on your own.
And a couple of weeks ago, we whittled it down to one of the base reasons for this is fear. Right? Fears that my freedoms are being impinged, fear that, I'm going to be the one who looks different. So I'm going to make somebody else look different first. And we have a lot of fear, and then that drives the judgmentalism and all the things that the dark stuff, like, like it just happens, but fear, it's usually the driver behind some of that.
I just think of so many times we consume so much, I don't know, media, everything around us, that we're so ready to explode with something like this. But when you look at Jesus, when you think about it in John chapter 4, whenever the Samaritan woman, Jesus wanted to enter a dialogue with her. He didn't explode on her or anything like that. You think about Paul, whenever he went to Athens and all the false gods, I mean, it bothered him. And it all bothers us when we look at people that are worshiping a false god, that they're going to be lost forever, separated from God. Not all bothers. It shouldn't just cause us to become nonchalant. But again, look what he did. I mean, he went in and he tried to find some common ground and have dialogue with them, because
That's right.
going in and exploding on people in this kind of junk is not going to help anyone. But truthful dialogue, treating others the way we want to be treated, that's what's going to help change people. And it may not. I mean, how many times was Paul run out of cities? How many times was Jesus run out?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I might be concerned about the pilot.
He probably had his earphones on.
Yeah, we're gonna turn this plane around. We're making land this plane.
So
So is part of the I mean, there's this obvious cultural shift that's taking place, right? So if you're over a certain age, you're raised, like Rick said, if I could paraphrase, to be intolerant, right? And so if under whatever that age, that X age is, you're raised, and your values are different. Your value is tolerance first. Then how do we deal with that? You know, we talked about several weeks ago, I can't remember how long ago it was, but you quoted some Barna statistics about how many kids stay in the church, right? I wonder if that's a factor, right? If kids are raised with this value of tolerance and they look at the older people in the church that are intolerant, they don't want to have anything to do with that, right? So like, I know this is changing the conversation a little bit, I'd like to do that maybe, but it's like, I think this is a big, big deal,
Yeah.
right?
And we'll have I guess.
We have some stats.
We have some stats. coming up.
Aaron brought stats today for just this reason, so yes.
Aaron has stats.
We have some stats, because that's an excellent point, right? Is it the tolerance of our kids in a reaction to our intolerance? Or is there also some other stuff working on there? And that's, I don't know if we'll ever know the answer.
Well, you know, as I've grown up, I've noticed that a lot of times the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You yell and yell and harp and complain long enough, and over and over and over, something happens. With X generation, when the preceding generation's all gone, what do you got? You got what's left. And if they haven't done the same thing that we did, it's going to be different. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's what's going to happen. So, yeah.
They're just waiting for us to move on, is what you're saying.
Yep, exactly.
Wait for him to die
And
off.
that's what I won't worry about.
Change in generations.
Something that Susan said and Pat, best thing that's ever happened in my life is driving that school bus. It has changed my heart because I have looked at kids that are just screaming out for help. And they don't know where to go. They have nowhere to go. And and they're from every kind of thought and background and thing that before I would have just thumped and, let's just, get them. But I have fallen so in love with these kids that it breaks my heart. And maybe all of us need to go and get in a school classroom or drive a school bus or something. We've got hard hearts because, this is where Jesus wants us.
And that ties to kind of our next chapter, right?
Yeah, so if we need more than just tolerance, how do we actually treat each other? And this section is, if Jesus was serious, then our conscience, not just our beliefs, will guide how we treat others.
So this leads to what would I want? So from the book, there was a couple sentences here I want to read to you. When determining how to respond to others, rather than asking what would Jesus do, the golden rule instructs us to ask, what would I want? What would I want done to me? How do we treat others? How would I want to be treated? Rather than setting the bar inaccessibly high by saying we should act like Jesus, the golden rule puts obedience within our reach by making our own conscience the standard. And part of that is it can be followed by anyone, anytime, in any culture, as long as the person is self-aware enough to acknowledge their own desires. So as long as you know, how would I want to be treated when I'm in a bad mood, when I've had a bad day, when I need some food, right? When I've just been yelled at by my spouse, when I'm not feeling secure in my job, when all these things are happening to me, how would I want to be treated? We all have access to that and can figure out, well, here's how I want to be treated.
And so it's interesting. You can look at this separate from a theological teaching, right? Very practically apply this. How do I want to be? Based on your conscience, can we apply this? But then from a Christian perspective, also considering love your neighbor as yourself. That ups the ante a little bit. But we can look at this very much from a practical standpoint, just a conscience.
It's a little bit of what you just said, which is, you look at these kids and they just need something, right? They need love. They need, what would you want if you were that child who needs something?
Why do we, who have Jesus in us, the Holy Spirit, why do we have such a hard time with this, Because again, like what Susan was talking about, one day on my bus here a couple of weeks ago, a little girl got on, she's a sophomore, and she was in tears, and her language was awful. But you know what? All the kids, I mean, just surrounded her, came up on the bus and surrounded her, and they were just ministering to her, and listening to her, and giving her advice, and just putting their arms around her. And their language wasn't the best either or anything. But I was sitting there with, I mean, I had tears in my eyes because I thought that's how we're to be. You know, I mean, we're to be that kind of community that, man, when somebody's hurting, we're all just gravitating to that person and wanting to help them.
That's right. So where along the way do we use that?
Yeah.
Where does the line cross where we say, oh, I have to go minister to David, he's wearing me out, right? As opposed to, hey man, what's going on? How can I help you? No, I got stuff planned, but it doesn't matter.
And
You're
that's a
important.
good point, because this little girl that was having the break, I mean, she has a lot of them. She's got a lot of drama.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
they don't tire out.
No, this happened to you last week, Aaron. I'm not gonna help you again this week,
I know.
right? This is the kind of things we think as adults, right? How many times are you gonna do this, Anita? Chris said that to me yesterday. How many times are you gonna do this? I don't know.
70 times 7.
Yeah, 70 times 7. Are you keeping track? Let's get the board out.
Infinity and beyond.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's also interesting in this context why the author said not just our beliefs. So now you ready for some statistics?
Of course they are. They've been waiting for it.
They have. Okay, so this is based upon a Lifeway Research in combination with, I don't know how you say that, ministries.
We can hear.
Yeah, so this is a survey of American evangelicals. 69% disagreed that small sins deserve damnation. So we're basically saying, there's not all sins that fall into the all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Right? There's the white lies. There's the I did that for a better purpose, right? 69, almost 70% of American evangelicals disagree on levels of sin and how it should impact us. Sorry, you can say something.
No, it's funny that we justify it. Well, I had a reason for that, right? You can understand that somebody in that situation would have done what I did. They just shaved a little bit off the top.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna be hurt by it. It's a victimless crime.
Nobody will know.
Nobody will know.
Nobody will know. 58% said that worshiping alone or with one's family is a valid replacement for regular church attendance. Again, this is very different. New Testament was all about community and togetherness, and we in our American evangelicalism has taught or belief it's very individualistic, and I don't have to be a part of anybody else. Interesting here, 59% said that the Holy Spirit is a force and not a personal being. That's scary. And lastly, 32% agreed that religious belief is a matter of personal opinion and not objective truth. And again, these are American evangelicals. So the point here is sometimes our beliefs get in the way of how we should treat people because our beliefs aren't very good or aren't very accurate. And this was a 2018 survey.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
Probably got more worse.
You know, there was a controversy in my therapist, right? So there was a bill being passed that it was all about money, right? So you get reimbursed the same for an in-person face-to-face session as you do for a telehealth session, right? So guess which side all the therapists came out on? Yes, you should. But no one wanted to speak the truth that there is a difference. And I wisely kept my mouth shut because it wasn't about what the question that was on the floor was about. It was about reimbursement rates. So we all wanted equal reimbursement rates because we deserve to be paid for our time. But nobody wanted to ask the question, is it really the same? Because it's not. Because when you and I are on a Zoom conversation, it's not the same as when you and I are standing right there, right? And I feel the same way about that, you know, worshiping alone. I mean, television church was created by televangelists, and it's just become a part of our culture. And now we accept that as part of our culture. And COVID has really challenged us to, like, this church in particular, like, are we gonna like provide that offering? And I think it was great that we did that. It's like it helped us to stay at least a little bit more tethered together. But it's like, is that really what church is about?
Right.
You know, like, you can't lay on hands, which is literally specifically commanded in, you know, you can't kiss one another with a holy kiss on Zoom, right? Regardless of how you feel about it, that is what Romans 16:16 says,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
I don't know, I got some feelings about that.
Well, you're on the right side of these statistics apparently.
You
So
know,
that's great.
Anyway,
Yeah. Well, and so part of that, it's funny you say that. I mean, we've gone a rabbit trail here, but I listened to a sermon yesterday as I was driving, and they said, well, being in person is a dramatic difference, right? You get solid truth, you get personal interaction, you have all these things, you know. Being alone in the woods is fine sometimes, right? But not a regular substitute for being in person with a community of believers who love and support you and who require your love and support. It's dramatically different. But for 58% to say, it's fine, that's pretty scary.
You know, if you go to a rock concert or something like that, I mean, do you want to go to the rock concert? Or do you just want to watch it on television if it's offered on television? I mean, you know, personally, I love any kind of live music. I mean, you get around a crowd and community and live music, it's meant to do something for you. And, you know, I mean, that's the way it is with our community and our assembly. And I just think the 58%, I just want to say on the value replacement for regularly, I don't like for regularly attending church. And I think that's what a lot of our sons, young people have seen is that, oh, well, we just attend church and we kind of go through the motions, but are we really community?
Right.
And that's the challenge for us as leaders and as a body of believers. That, you know, we need to make it community. I mean, you know, it's just not about just going and just attending.
Right. Yeah, I have people that I've had this conversation with, like, well, I watched the YouTube. Well, I watched the sermon. Well, I listened to somebody in the background while I was doing my Sunday morning cleaning. Really? It's not the same, right? You think you're checking the box and it's not the same. So that kind of leads us to a next statistic. So, you know, Aaron had all those, so I figured I gotta have one. This is from 2020. This is I gotta have colors and lines and stuff. So how Americans relate to Christianity is changing. This is from 2000 to 2020. The red line is practicing Christians. The blue line is non-practicing Christian, and the yellowish orange line is non-Christian. So you can see right there around 2010, 2011, 2012, practicing Christians kind of takes a nosedive, right? And non-practicing Christians, the difference between practicing and non-practicing is attending church regularly. Consider it a big part of my life and attending church service in person regularly. So right around that time, you know, I would have thought COVID would see another huge drop in this, but practicing Christians drops, non-practicing Christians, the difference being attending church. So this ties back to what we were talking about earlier. Is this partly because of the tolerance intolerance thing? Because a different generation says, man, go to church and I felt like tolerance and love and serving is what I should be getting. Instead I get, you know, bitterness and darkness and intolerance and not really willing to serve unless it's conditional, not really willing to love unless it's conditional. And so some of this changes. So the years are on the bottom, years are on the bottom, and percentages are on the left. So the percentage of
So it should add up to,
US
US,
Right. Yep, US
how
adults.
Americans are relating to Christianity. So it should add up to 100% of people surveyed.
so it's not church attendance.
No,
Correct.
So the non-practicing
Well-
Christian blue line
Goes
is
up,
going up.
right.
And what does that mean?
Although-
They are more tolerant of Christianity?
No.
Non-practicing Christian means that, you know,
You're
I'm
right.
still a Christian, but I'm not going to church.
Yeah, so it is tied into attendance.
It
That's
ties
not the
into
only-
attendance.
yeah.
That's
Okay, so
one
the
facet.
number of Christians who are say they're Christian but not going to church have gone up.
Yes.
And the
Correct.
number who are, say they're Christians but go to church has fallen.
Correct. Correct. Yep. Yep. And then the yellow orangish line is just non-Christian baptized. Right? So,
And what's scary is in a lot of these, a practicing Christian definition is not even every week, once every week. It's usually not even 3 out of 4 weeks that you've attended something.
it's just
Really-
regularly, it's very
really
loose, right?
loose.
Do you regularly attend the service? And somebody might say, hey, they're twice a year, that's regularly, right?
Yeah, so I'm regular in my Christmas and Easter attendance.
I think it kind of indicates that other things have taken place.
Yep.
And I know that in my family, very much, it's sports.
Right. Right. Okay, let me add one little piece of context. Brian is ready to push the buzzer, but let me add one little piece of context. I'm not going to blame everything on social media. However, this ties to a comment that was made. In February 2012, Mark Zuckerberg famously reflected on all of this. And he said, today our society has reached another tipping point. He wrote this in a letter to his investors. Facebook hoped to rewire the way people spread and consume information. So this in 2012. How do you think they've done? They've done pretty well, right? They've rewired the way we spread and consume information. Again, not all the evils in society are based on social media. However, this chart lines up with his comments. So it could have been a tipping point, right? We're right at the edge and social media just said,
Well, if I can piggyback on what Betty said, related to what you're saying, is something that David said. Are these people in the blue finding community elsewhere? Like, why do people do all those crazy sports? Because there's community there. Like, they all hang out and drink beers in the parking lot while their kids are hitting whatever widgets they're hitting or kicking or whatever. Right? I mean, that's what it's all about.
Right.
I mean, who cares if an 8-year-old is playing whatever? And don't get me started.
Yeah.
It's about community, it's not about sports.
Right,
And there's so
right,
many
right.
things that are like that. People are finding community outside of here because we're not doing a good job.
Agreed. They love me. They tolerate me. I feel comfortable with them. These are my friends. My party friends are more important to me than my church.
When I have things that happen like that girl, people surround me and they love me.
Exactly. That's right. All right. You can hit the ball. Thank you for your time. More.